Okay.
Hi.
Okay. So good
We're
evening, everybody.
recording.
Yep. Okay. Good evening, everybody. I am Susan M. Hartzer Video. I am the horticulturist from the Rutgers Cooperative Extension in Ocean County. And I have a little bit of double duty right now. I'll introduce myself and my co-hosts today, and then I'm actually your presenter as well. So I want to introduce Patty Dixon, who is also a horticulturist at the Rutgers Cooperative Extension in Ocean County. And we have Diane Larson, who is the horticulturist and master gardener coordinator, my position, but in Monmouth County. So she is our guest question answer panelist tonight. And thank you, Diane.
You're welcome.
It's always nice to spend. It's nice to spend some time with you outside of the office.
Yes.
It would be better in person, but I get it. We're good. So everybody, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm going to talk about growing figs in the home garden. So there are a lot of people that like to grow figs and don't know what to do about it, or just they're anxious. What am I going to do? How am I going to grow it? So we'll talk about that and give you some tips. And then your videos and microphones are disabled, and the chat feature has actually been disabled. So when you ask questions, if you can put those into the Q&A, and Patty and Diane will answer what they can, and then we're at the end, I'll have time to answer questions, and we'll go through those questions as necessary. And our next talk will be TikTok on May 4th at 7. It would also be myself, and we're going to talk about the types of ticks we have in New Jersey, and then also actually in the Mid-Atlantic, because a lot of our ticks are the same in the Mid-Atlantic states, and then also some tick safety tips and why is it important to be cognizant of what to do and keep the ticks off you, or if you find one, what to do about it. So, all right, on that note, again, thank you everybody for coming in, and let me get my computer back to, of course, there we go. So we have our Justice for All. All our programming is equal opportunity, and we are recording this. So if anybody needs any specific needs, just you can always contact our office, and we will help in any way we can in order to present this in a manner that is accessible by all. So, okay. So, figs. What about figs? What do we do with figs? Figs. So we always, figs have been around. They've been talked about. You see it in history. You see it in different, artwork. So the history of figs are native to Asia Minor and in the Mediterranean. So they are from a temperate zone, more so than our colder winters. So we will talk about why that can be an issue for us. And they have been cultivated since 5000 BCE. And the BCE, for anybody, I had to look that up just to make sure I was right. And it's before Common Era. That is the proper way to put that. And it's been mentioned in lots of writing. Shakespeare, everybody's got something going on about figs, whether it's the fruit, whether it's dried, whether it's the fig leaf, and its many uses. But it was introduced to Florida in 1575 by Spanish explorers. And then the mission fig was then introduced into California in 1769 by Spanish Franciscan missionaries. And that's how it became called the mission fig. But you can see some mature tree fig. I mean, they're huge. They're beautiful. I have to say, here where we are in, the Northeast, figs would not get to this size for us, or this nice big tree, like a tree for us, because of our cold winters. So that'll be something that you do need to be careful of. So we will discuss that. And so, what is fig? Figs, Ficus carica is the name of a comet, is the type of figs that we're talking about. because as you know, there are houseplant figs. You've got the tree type banyans, I believe, are in the fig family, and you have the little creeping figs and houseplants. So there's a lot of different types of ficus out there, but we're talking about the common fig. And the fig is a fruit type. It's known as a multiple fruit, as a zygonium, excuse me. And it's an arrangement of many small flowers on an inverted, so the flower is hangs down, and it's nearly closed. So it's not an open flower like we're used to, where we have our petals and our little stamens and our female and male parts. So here is a rendition of it. There's an opening down here. The opening is called the ostiole, and what happens is this is where the male flowers are here and the female flowers are on the inside. So the actual flowers are all contained on the inside of the fruit. It's a flower, but that actually winds up becoming your fruit. And figs do need a fig wasp to pollinate. Now, not all figs, which is what we're going to talk about, but many of the varieties do need this little wasp, which you can see in the picture over here. They do need them to come in. They'll go up through the ostiole, walk around, get the pollen from the males and go to the females, and that's how we create, they pollinate, and that is what creates the fig. So it's kind of cool. It's just something different. You'll never maybe look at a fig again the same way, but and figs are different. Fig Newtons, that's a cookie, not true figs. So you definitely have to experience it, and you need to eat them when they are ripe. That is a big thing. So there are some of the varieties of figs can produce two crops. The first crop is called a breba crop, and it's formed on the old wood. In other words, the wood that was formed from last year that has, overwintered, and sometimes you'll get the fruit on it. And sorry, I just have to move my little window. Too many windows up here. So here is a picture of a breba fruit. So you can see it's nice and big. That's on this older wood. And then if you look at this branch right here, this is new wood, which is the growth that's coming out for this year. And this is the main crop, or the fall, what we would consider the fall crop for us. And that is generally the crop we tend to get here in New Jersey, depending on the variety that we are growing. So that's one of the bigger differences in some of the varieties that we'll discuss. But the mix, the big thing that happens sometimes with figs is as you're working around them, the milky sap, the latex sap, can be a skin irritant. So you do want to wear gloves if you do have a latex allergy or sensitivity to it. So you do want to keep that in mind when you're working around figs. And we're talking more, the latex is in the petiole of the fruit, where the fruit is attached to the stem, but it's also on the leaves and the branches. So when you do cut them, you do want to watch that you will get that sap on your pruners, on your hands. So you want to be careful. Other uses, I wasn't sure, like what do people use figs for? So we know it's a food crop, the variety that we're talking, the common figs, as a food crop. The seed oil, it's edible. It's also used as a lubricant. The leaves are used for fodders in India, for fodder for animals in India, and they will actually wait till the fruit is finished, or when they harvest the fruit, then they can take the leaves, and they give it to their animals for food products. But also in France, they make a fig leaf absolute, which is a part that is used, then a liquid that is used in perfume making for scent, and it's usually used for woodsy types of scents. So I thought that was interesting. Try to find, what do you do? The latex is also dried and powdered. It can actually coagulate milk, so they use it for cheese and making junket. I actually had to look up junket as well, and that is also a curdled cheese. It's not as made as much as it used to be, but that is something that is just, again, something different. We just, things that the lost art, I suppose. But then we also use the latex to isolate the enzyme fictin, which is then used to tenderize meat. And then there is a medicinal use of latex and figs for folk remedies in other countries. So, or in folk medicine and things like that. So, okay. I'm usually behind the screen. So, all right. So the types of figs. A lot of people don't realize that there are 4 types of common figs. That again, we're talking about the genus Ficus Carica. And we have 4 types of figs. We have the Capra fig, the Smyrna, the San Pedro, and the common. Capra figs have the male flowers. So this picture's, I couldn't get it any bigger without it going blurry. Capra figs are known, they're usually grown because they do have the male flowers. They're grown for pollinating other figs. They're not usually an edible fig. They don't taste good. But they have a large ostiole so that the wasps can get in there and carry the pollen from those flowers to other figs that you would have in the area, other types. Smyrna figs have female flowers and they need the cross pollination. So they need to have a Capra fig nearby in order to pollinate those. And they develop a fruit only when fertile seeds are present. So it's also, but they're also known for their quality and excellent nutty flavor. I believe they are also one of the larger types of figs. San Pedro has the female flowers and it needs pollination as well. And it does usually have 2 crops of fruit. So you do get the Breba crop, which is that first crop, and the second crop. So for us, the common fig it has a female flower, but it's parthenocarpic. In other words, it does not need that wasp for pollination. It will pollinate itself. So what we can grow here in New Jersey and in the colder areas in the United States, the common fig is what we will be discussing tonight, the true variety of common fig. So there are many types of the common figs. And some of the varieties that do well in New Jersey. I know there's a lot of you guys that are joining us from other states, and a lot of this information is still true for you guys, depending on your zone that you're in. But you want to maybe grow these in containers versus in the grounds, because depending on how cold your temperatures get, that would be where there's going to be some definitive what you can grow and how you can grow it. So here in New Jersey, brown turkey is a variety that is it's hardy to 10. It's got a long harvest, high fruit quality. The fruit is medium in size, and it has a bronze skin, so they call that a purple fig. And it has a nice amber pulp on the inside. The fruit is small to medium and has a closed eye, so it's good also as a fresh fruit or process for processing. Our big thing with the ostiole and having a closed eye, the ostiole is also, that's another name for the ostiole, is having an area that having a closed ostiole is important so that you can have low fungus issues. It's not open and the water and moisture can't get in there. So we will talk about that as we get towards the disease issues. Celeste is another variety. It's a winter hardy variety to 0. It's a short ripening season, which helps because those of you that have tried to grow figs, sometimes we don't get a full ripened crop. The crop drops before we get a chance because we get too cold too quick in the fall. The fruit is small though in a Celeste, and it's small to medium, and it has purple bronze, lightish a light brown color on the outside, and Celeste has a closed eye. Again, a good one for our area because of our high humidity. We do want to be careful about our having that open space in the fruit to keep the fungal issues down. Oops, there you go. So couple other varieties that grow well here is the mission fig. It's a reliable producer with an excellent quality. It has a large blackish fig with the red pink pulp, which is most common that we do tend to see here. Hardy Chicago is another one. It's really tasty at full maturity, and we'll talk about how to harvest them. Green Aisha, Isia, is not it's called hardy. It's a small plant, but it's a green variety that has good flavor, and it has a nice strawberry center, and again, that closed eye. And again, that closed eye is what we're looking for our area to keep fungus and things at bay. So let's see. So growing conditions. Just like a lot of different plants that we do see, anybody that's going to fruit trees, vegetables, if you want to get fruit, which is the part we're eating in this manner, you do want to have it in full sun. So it gets a full 8 hours or more of sun. They prefer a soil pH of 6 to 7.5. So they actually prefer more of a lime soil, more so than an acidic soil. You want to make sure that the soil is well drained, no wet feet. They do not want to have their roots sitting in water. And I can attest to that since I have killed mine because I did not realize how wet my soil was in the wintertime. It stayed too wet in the winter. So when I did mine in the ground in this one spot I have. But when it's water, you want to water when newly planted at least 1 inch per week. And in some of the colder climates, height is controlled. So we talk a little bit about height. The plants themselves, if you don't have any dieback, the plants can get anywhere from 8 to 12 feet in the warmer climates. But for us, usually anywhere from 6 to 7, maybe 8 here, depending on how much dieback you might have from winter kill. So sandy soils in our southern New Jersey are usually acidic, so a soil test can determine your pH. And you, again, must have the well-drained soil. You can fertilize. So fertilizing, a lot of questions come in about fertilizing. You can fertilize with a nitrogen fertilizer, such as ammonium nitrate or ammonium sulfate, after the first growing season in the early spring. So if you planted it this year, next year you can use a fertilizer that has more nitrogen in it. And that would be doing that just as it's starting to break dormancy, so late March. You're going to apply approximately a half a cup after the first winter, beginning of the second growing season, and increase the amount by half a cup each year until the trees are 4 years old. I'm giving you somewhat of a recipe here. It is in the Rutgers fact sheet on the growing figs in the home garden. That was a part of the PowerPoint. So if you did not get that, we can get that to you. And I think Patty was going to put a link in the Q&A so that would pop up for you guys and you can follow that if you did not get that handout. But you do want to spread your fertilizer evenly, and you want to you can use additional nitrogen depending on the desired amount of growth. That being said, however, over-fertilizing will delay your ripening of your fruit and the quality of the fruit. So you want to be careful not to over-fertilize if you're going to, because fertilizer comes into a lot. So sometimes I say, play it by ear, kind of see how things go, see what your first, second crops look like, and wait, a couple of years after you get this guy, if you're or girl in the ground, the tree in the ground, or if you're planting it in a pot, you may want to then, see what goes naturally for you before you start adding lots of fertilizer. If your plant is growing more than 1 to 2 foot in a season, you don't want to fertilize with too much nitrogen. You don't want to use that extra nitrogen. Because of the fact that if you're putting on too much growth, then it will affect your crop. Okay. You also don't want to plant figs near clay sewer pipes or septic tanks because they do have a very fibrous root system. So they can be a detriment to sewer areas or septic. So you do want to be careful of that. Our trees, again, our plants here, because we do get a lot of dieback, probably not as much of an issue, but don't plant it on top of your septic. Or again, most of our pipes now aren't clay, but that is something to keep in mind. And then you may also need to have winter protection. We'll talk a little bit more about the winter wind protection. So you may need to wrap it depending on your temperatures where you are growing. So going forward, and again, I will have questions. There'll be time for questions as we go, towards the end. But growing in containers. So figs, people want to grow them. Everybody wants to grow them. I worked for a company, and Pop was from Italy, and he had figs, and he would always talk about his figs in his olive groves and in Italy, and he always has a fig tree growing, and and everybody has their own take on what works for you. I'm giving you what is the basics that you need, and you can experiment a little bit, but you do want to you'd still need some basic requirements for your figs. So if you'd like to grow it in containers, you do want to provide it with a large container as the plant matures. So, you know, obviously if you're starting out with a 1 gallon or an 8-inch pot, you don't want to put it in a 24-inch pot the first year because it's gonna just have too much extra soil. You want to put it into maybe 2 sizes up from that 8-inch pot, and then maybe in another year you can move it into a larger one. But the benefits of growing in containers is that you can move the plant into a warmer spot in the fall so that you do get some fruit to ripen, because fruit drop is an issue if our seasons change so quickly here sometimes. And you can manage the height much easier to, if you want to, you know, bring it in. It's in containers. It's you're restricting its growth by having it in a container, and you wouldn't have to wrap it because you're going to be bringing it in. And I say bringing it in, but you're going to bring it in to a shed or a garage, someplace where it is protected from the winter. It does not need to be totally it doesn't have to be heated per se, but you do not want it to go below that 0 degrees Fahrenheit when you are bringing that into a garage or a detached garage or a shed. So you do want to be careful about that. But the disadvantage is that watering can be an issue. Sometimes you might have to water it a little bit more in a pot, so you might have to be more cognizant about that, especially if you have a lot of growth on it. And you have to have somewhat of a cool space for the winter. So you do not want to bring your fig in the house to grow in the house. It does need to have a little bit of a chilling period, not long of one, in order for that fruit crop to produce, for the Breba crop, the first crop to produce for those varieties that do have a second crop, first crop, excuse me. So, you know, having a cool space in the winter, so like again, a garage, a root cellar, would be a place that you could put that. All right. So harvesting figs, when we're talking about, we want that harvest. Okay, so now we've got our figs. What do we do? The big thing you need to do is protect it from the birds. That is a must. Birds, deer will eat them as well, but birds in particular will come and peck at the fruit. And once they peck at the fruit, that fruit is usually gets fungus and rot starts setting in, and it goes. In some of the research, as I was preparing this talk, they did say that the green varieties seem not to be eaten as easily by birds as much as the brown figs or the purple figs. So maybe try growing a green fig if that's an issue, but you still want to provide some kind of protection from the birds coming and pecking at the fruit. Squirrels like the fruit. Everybody seems to want the fruit before you get it, so you do want to give it some protection. In this picture here on the top right, you can see that actually this person put in little, they're almost like sachet bags, and they put that around the fruit to keep the birds from pecking or getting too close into to the fruit there. So that would be one way if you want to protect some of your fruit as they're ripening, as they're really getting closer to that ripening stage. Or you can do a bird netting, excuse me, or deer netting, something that's got some smaller holes so that the birds can't get in and get to that fruit. But you want to let the figs ripen on the plant. They do not ripen once they're pulled off. So ripening for us here in New Jersey is about mid-September through frost. So that would be for that second crop. The Breba crop, that you're going to have to see whether that works for you and the variety that you're growing. Sometimes as our season goes, you might get a start of that first crop, but then it'll drop depending on the conditions that are going on for you. But you know it is ready to harvest when it's fully colored. It's slightly soft. So that's when you want to pick it, but you want to be careful because the skins are fragile. So you want to, you know, don't yank it off the tree. You kind of want to do a slight twist, I believe, is what they recommend. But it does have a short shelf life, so you don't want to pick it. Again, we said you can't pick it ahead of time. It won't ripen off the tree, and it only has a couple of days of shelf life. There are different recipes and methods that you can use to preserve them if you'd like to dry them and use your figs that way. Very high sugar content, so which is what, you know, makes it sweet for us to want to eat. So winterizing, we get a lot of questions about winterizing and what do you do? How do you take care of those trees in the wintertime? So there are times when those temperatures are between 15 to 0 degrees Fahrenheit that can kill top growth. and maybe kill the roots again, depending on your variety. So you want to grow figs as shrubs because they'll be easier to wrap rather than letting them get to these big monster sizes and trying to wrap it up. And how do you wrap it? You can wrap it with burlap or tar paper. Again, the point of wrapping it is to keep that wind from freezing those stems and having those stems freeze, so giving it some protection. I've actually spoken with Dan Ward, who is one of the co-authors of the fact sheet, and he said, you know, you don't always have to wrap it. It's just you need to give it some protection. You needed to give it some shelter of some sort. So that's important. If the branches are supple, you can bend them and pin them to the ground and then tarp it. That's, you know, if you've got the space to do that. Most of us in our gardens don't have that much room to be able to do that. But this picture here on the right, you can see this was done at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. They actually have a video. I have a page at the end with some of the different links that you guys can check out, and I can also send it to you guys out tomorrow with the recording when we have the recording link up for you, so that you can check out some of these websites that I do have listed here in the PowerPoint. But you can also do, some people have done a chicken wire. So you make a chicken wire surround and put leaves or straw and then a tarp over the top. You still want to cover the top because you don't want that material to stay overly wet and then have a possible rot issue in the wintertime either. So keeping that covered over the top is one way to do that, to help that. And then you want to remove any of the wrappings after danger of frost. Now here in South Jersey, in Ocean County, our technical ground freeze would be, I believe it's April 19th. Our actual air freezing, so to best way to put it, our last frost-free date is usually around May 15th. So you can start unwrapping your fig before that, in that like a mid-April. So now you could start unwrapping your fig, but you might lose if you do have a Brava crop from the variety that you're growing. You might lose it if where temperatures really dip down really low for a length of time. So you want to keep that in mind. And then again, once you're winterizing, you can either, if it's in a container, you can bring it into a greenhouse or a garage or container if it is container grown. So there are some different methods that you can do. I hear a lot of stories of my grandparents in Brooklyn have, you know, everybody has one on their deck in the back. So what do you do with these? Providing them with some shelter in the winter, a windbreak, anything in the southern side is really, is really good. And I just dropped my notes, so I wanted to make sure if there was anything that I missed about winterizing. You can also, there is a method of making a trench where you dig up the whole root ball. You actually make a trench next to it. You dig up the root ball, you tilt the whole root ball and all, lay the branches, tie them up, lay them down into the trench, and then fill that trench in with mulch and pretty much mulch or composted leaf matter. And then in the spring, you would dig that back up and put it back in the ground. To me, that seems like a lot of work, but that is a method that has worked for people over the years as well. So I just don't, unfortunately, my gardens are pretty full, so that would not be an option for me. I would have to either wrap it or grow it in a container to bring it in. Okay. And so pruning. Our third bigger question is, why do I prune? How do I prune? When do I prune? So I thought we would put a little bit of this in here. Pruning for size and vigor is the point of pruning. Why do you need to prune? You don't have to prune, but you want to prune. You can, and the reason for it would be for the size and vigor. You want to prune when the plant is dormant, so in the spring. So before those leaves start popping out is when you want to do that. You want to cut out all dead and diseased wood. That is given with any plant material. You always want to cut out any of those diseased because that leaves the plant open or susceptible to other issues. And if it's okay, so if there's a little regiment of pruning. If it's a new plant, sorry, Gingerbread wanted to join us tonight. If it's a new plant, the first growing season, you're going to cut the whole plant to about 2 to 3 feet tall. You're going to remove all the branches off except for 3 or 4 main branches. And this pruning practice is also helpful to keep for air circulation because keeping fungus down. If you have too much moisture, fungus is an issue. And then you want to move all the other branches that come from the trunk. Now I do have a video, another slide that will show this a little bit better. And then in the first 5 years, you want to thin out any cross branches, suckers, any dead wood. And then that would be for the first 5 years. And then after that, you would only prune if you need it for size, or if the plant's not really pushing out too much, that maybe, kind of revitalize the plant. And this link here, this is extension from the University of Maryland. They have videos on showing you how and where to prune your fig. So if you would like to watch those, that link that's here on this slide would give you that information. And again, I will have the information. I can get that to you guys tomorrow, or when we get the video out for you guys. All right, so here's a little picture of what is a heading back cut versus a thinning cut. So on a heading back in the first growing season, this is what you would do. You would be cutting all this lush growth off down to main trunks, whether it's a multi-stemmed or a single-stemmed fig. Usually it's single-stemmed, but this was the best example I could find of a heading cut. You're going to cut it back to the main buds back here that first year. And then the subsequent years, what you would go in is you're going to go in and cut off, keep your main trunks and just cut off some of the smaller pieces to open up that canopy so that you have a more open and not so tight plant where the air can't circulate. And then also down here at the bottom, you can see that you're cutting off any suckers that are coming up from the base. And it's just with any plant that suckers. If you want to get a decent fruit crop, you don't want this plant expending all the energy into putting all this new growth and all the suckering energy into that and not producing that fruit that's where you're growing your fig for. So pruning can be important. It is not, you're not going to kill your plant because you're not pruning it right. It's just you may be, pruning at the wrong time. So again, prune it in the spring. You may, again, for those varieties that you might grow, there's a lot of varieties that do produce a Breba crop. And if you are looking for whatever reason, if that crop is, you're adamant about getting that Breba crop, yes, you want to be careful about when you prune because you're going to prune that fruit off because you're going back into that older wood. So you might lose it that 1 year. You don't have to prune every year, but again, those first 5 years, they're suggesting that you pay attention to your fig. And then after that, you'll just need to do it as needed. Any cross branches, any dead wood, you'll always want to cut out your dead wood. And that's with any pruning for any plant. Okay. So propagation. So I'm one of those people that I like to be able to, in order to talk about something, I need to do it myself. I need to try it. I need to, experience this. And so Patty and I did a little experiment in March, and we went and did a little Facebook video. So for those of you that are on Facebook, and we also have an Instagram page, you guys can check that out. We did a little video about pruning figs, and then also another one on propagating figs. That's on our Facebook page. So you can propagate them very easily, actually. You want to do it when the plant is dormant and semi-dormant wood. So dormant wood would be when the plant is not growing at all. Semi-dormant is when the buds are just maybe starting to break. So we did ours about May 15th. Time frame, but you want hardwood cuttings. In other words, you want to go into that older wood. You don't want to have this lush green growth that you have in the spring, where that's called softwood instead of being something that has overwintered. You're going to cut just below. I have some examples. You're going to cut just below a node, which is where where your buds are going to come out, and I'll show you that in the next one. You're going to take it from 1 to 3 year old wood. In other words, you don't want to go back where it's back to the main hard trunk that's been there for 5 to 10 years. If you're lucky, you want to go back to only that 1 year, full year, or up to 3 years worth of growth. You want to take a 9-inch in length cutting, about a pencil size width, to no larger than a 3/4 of an inch thick. And then you are going to put it into your soil or potting media if you decide to do it in containers versus in the ground. They are buried down to, you expose only one bud you leave exposed. And so that's where it's saying exposed the very tops to the air temperatures. Oh, my little baby, she's just a little pest today. Sorry, guys. So there are some links in here as well to if you for University of Tennessee shows about figs and how you can do an air layering, what part you cut, and also Penn State had a blog from Christina's plant propagation page. She really goes into talking about how to propagate the fig and give some really good pictures. So that's a really good site to check out too. So here's my example. So what I did is I took some, this is a 1 year cutting. This is, it's hardened off wood from the year before. So I wanted to show you what it looks like. This is about an 8 to 10 inch cutting. These little bumps here are where new leaves would come out. So that's a node. So you want to cut just above a node for your top. You take the top, you take the very tip off, and you want to cut just below a node on the other end. So if you're making a lot of cuttings, if you were doing this either for commercial use or you really want to start a whole bunch for your friends and neighbors, you want to cut one end so that you know which one's the top and which is the bottom. You can cut the top of the cut, the top above the node. You can cut on an angle. The bottom you can cut more flat, closer to the node, and then that way you'll know which end is top, up and down. We did not use any rooting hormone. You can, but we did not use any rooting hormone. We kind of just put them fresh out of a little vase of water. We put them in fresh. You can not overwinter, excuse me. You can hold the cuttings in perlite or vermiculite in a cool spot. If you're not ready to plant them, if you're taking cuttings like in January and you're not ready to start them, you can bundle them together and keep them in a cool container with, again, some of the perlite or vermiculite, just to lay them down in that, and then you're going to start them. We did this in the office, so excuse my container, but we did use a pretzel container, but I poked some holes in the bottom of it. Used my growing medium, which was ProMix, and we put the cuttings in. So you can see I buried it down to, here's the top node. We buried it, as my container was only 8 inches, so I had to cut some of those a little bit more. So you're going to keep the one bud above the soil line. And then the cuttings can be planted outside as well if you didn't want to do it in a container, but we wanted to start it so we could take some pictures. So about 3 weeks, they leafed out pretty quick. They started breaking their buds pretty quick once I put them in the soil. You want to keep that soil evenly moist, but again, you want that water to drain. And you'll actually see right here are some little of the little breba, the little figs. Now, if you would get those, you do need to take those off because they are an energy sink, because now here's this plant that has no roots trying to push out leaves and support. So you want to take off those, any of those breba fruit that you might get should you start crop. But we were so tickled. I left it on. Needless to say, they fell off last week. So I just wanted to let you know. But I looked at our plants. I used a clear container so I could see the roots. I did not put a picture in here. But our figs rooted. So I did 5 cuttings. I can see roots on at least two of them so far. So about approximately a month, we actually do have roots on our figs, on our little cuttings. So what you would do normally then is let those root up, let the leaves have expanded a lot. I do have them under a grow light in the office. So they seem to be happy so far. Once it comes time, I will take those cuttings, put them outside, get them acclimated to going outside, getting a better root system on them. And then I'm actually going to, because that jar has a closed, or that lid is tight there, I'm actually going to cut that jar apart and open that up and then transplant those cuttings into their individual pots, or put them in the ground. I haven't decided yet, but once we do that, if I'm going to do a pot, again, a growing medium, you want to use a potting soil in a container. Don't use ground soil so that it has better drainage. And you want to grow those plants in that area for at least the full season, and then you can transplant it in the ground the following year if you decide, the following spring. But you need to give it protection from that first year. They're going to be very susceptible to cold damage and winter kill. So you really need to be careful about that in that first year. That's kind of like the easy way. So if you have, if you have somebody's fig and grandpa's fig or the gentleman down the street or the woman down the street, and they want to give you some cuttings, try it. Don't hesitate. Try it. It's so much fun to do different things, and see what grows for you and see what works for you. I wanted to, the other thing that I tried to figure out what kind of questions you guys might have. And again, should have some time for questions here shortly. But problem solving, what kind of problems do you find? And these are some of the common ones that we get questions about in the office. So winter kill. That the plants, the number one is winter kill. My figs are dying to the grounds. What can I do? You can wrap them or again, cage the trees, in which we showed the picture of that earlier. Fruit drop. I'm getting fruit, but it's dropping. Why? Cool weather. Sometimes that weather cools too quickly. There's not enough water. They get stressed, or there's too much nitrogen fertilizer. And that was something we had talked about a little bit about watching that nitrogen. And we're talking, so you can have fertilizers with potassium, phosphorus, the other numbers that are part of your makeup of your fertilizer. But nitrogen tends to be the one that's that can be an issue for the fruit if it's too much nitrogen. So you want to be careful. Fruit split. I've heard that many a times, and Paparuta, I'll put his little name in there. His fruit, we would be watching it. Oh, it's gonna be ripe. Oh, we'll pick them next day, and then it rained overnight. And too much water at one time will cause the fruit to ripen. Split like that, or it's too ripe. You didn't pick it soon enough. So that's unfortunately, if you get it that day, you might be able to eat it, but usually bees and everybody else are in there. The birds will come and get it as well if it splits open. So it's definitely going to be a lost crop for you if for that particular fruit that day. Poor quality of fruit. So you get the fruit and you hear about how great these fruit are when you buy them at the store, or not even at the store, but when you get it fresh off the tree. It's the length of the growing season. And because we are colder here in the winter, our growing season tends to be a little shorter than it would be down in Florida or out in California, where it's nice and dry, the Mediterranean areas and things like that. So the length of the growing season can be an issue for us. So your fruit may not get a chance to ripen, and therefore, so you've got all this great fruit, but it gets too cold and it freezes and drops. Or again, it doesn't ripen fully before you go and pick it. Hot and dry weather right before it's ripe can be an issue. So again, warm weather they want, some dry, but they don't want it to be a drought like that August time frame for us. And sometimes that happens for us in that late September. We get those fall summers where we get that secondary heat sink in September, and that can sometimes be an issue. Rotting fruit, again, this is where that ostiole, that closed opening at the bottom of the fruit, is what you're looking for. You're looking for varieties that have that in order to help keep the rotting, that the fruit rots before it even gets a chance to ripen. That is something you can, you'd be looking for varieties that have that closed ostiole, which would be a better choice. And then some other troubleshooting, some other issues that happen. We did get some, this is a photo from a client that sent in, my fig leaves, they're all turning brown. What happened? Well, we found out that this person in particular had it in the sun, but they had put neem oil on the plant and then it burned. So it was an insecticidal burn, particular on this particular leaf. But sunburn, sometimes the leaves can get scorched, and drought will also cause some browning a lot of times on the edges. Not so much in the middle of the leaf, but more on the edges or the outer edge of the leaf. And then rust. We do see rust here. Rust itself, fig rust is different than like the cedar apple rust and the other rust that we have on hollyhocks and things like that. It is a problem for figs. It's usually the fig rust is on figs only. However, There's not a lot. There's not a lot that you can do to spray to control it. So keeping your sanitation, keeping any dropped leaves from the ground in the fall, getting rid of anything that is dropped is the best way to do that. Also, your pruning, opening it up so there's good aeration around the plant, and getting some circulation. And then there are a lot of different websites that I looked at, and even fact sheets, even Rutgers says use a labeled fungicide for this. There aren't any labeled fungicides that I could find easily for homeowners to use for specifically for rust on ficus that list them, and we're always telling you to follow the label directions. So you do want to be careful if you decide that the only time you would really need to spray for rust, you need to do it before it starts. So you would need to do it before the actual infection happens. So you would do it in the dormant time frame, and it's the reason it can become an issue is that the leaves can drop. The rust does not harm the fruit, but it can become a problem when the leaves drop in the fall, later as the plant's trying to ripen, and it stresses the plant out when it loses its leaves. Now it's trying to push out a whole nother set of leaves. Now we're coming into the fall, and you get that winter kill. It makes it much more susceptible to winter kill. So that's where it can be an issue. I can't say from experience. I can't give you home recipes, so I won't do that. But if you do want to, you can try using a copper fungicide. But I don't know, I have to do some more research. I'm still trying to get somebody to pin down somebody and say, how do you use it for a fig? Other states that have fact sheets about figs, they all say that there are no labeled fungicides for figs in their state. So that's something I need to do a little more research for you guys. So I really don't want to give you any recommendations, but it is something that you definitely, if you're going to possibly use this copper, which is effective against rust, how effective on figs is another story, but you need to do it prior to the infection, not when you start seeing the issue. And Meredith Melendez, who is our one of our ag agents in Mercer County, I believe, she did a Rutgers had a soil pest advisory, plant pest advisory, excuse me, and that she talked about using in New Jersey soils. There is some talk about copper fungicide use and in our soils, and there is some cautions you may want to read about that. More on commercial use. We don't do a commercial fig crop here in New Jersey. Some people do grow them. Don't get me wrong, as an edible crop, but usually your bigger producers of figs are in your warmer temperate zones. But one thing you definitely do not want to do, some people will tell you, oh, as my grandpa always, or my dad does this, my mom does this, sulfur. Using a sulfur fungicide. You can use a sulfur fungicide, but do not use an oil, or do not use it after a month or so after oil has been sprayed. It becomes a phytotoxicity, and it can actually kill your plant. So you do want to be careful about using a sulfur with an oil, or oil after sulfur, sulfur after oil. That can be a big problem. So you do want to keep that in mind. All right, so I think I have one more. So for us, insects are not usually a big issue. Most of the time, I'm talking about some of these problems. They're not that big of an issue for a lot of people, but I have had people say, what do I do? I've got these problems. And sometimes it can just be a minute problem for one person. That's a big problem in their mind, versus really being a pest or a detriment to the actual fig. So there are some insect issues like scale. There's beetles, stink bugs, mealybugs, borers. We don't get that too much here as much, but root nematodes also, we don't usually get that here because we're too cold. In the southern states, it's a problem. But should you have plant-specific problems, contact your local county cooperative extension. In New Jersey, we all have, every county has its own cooperative extension. In other states, you have Penn State, you have Cornell, you have Purdue, depending on what state you're in, you do have a cooperative extension in your state. So you may want to use them as a resource as well. All right, so one other last, I think, on the troubleshooting is wildlife. Protect it. So you can see here, I thought this was a great way of using a tent frame for one of those pop-up tents, you put that around. This is a rather large fig. Put that around your fig and then use your deer netting or your bird netting to go across and over it. You do need to stake it down or tie it to the base of, make it like a balloon, and tie it to the base of the tree in order to keep the animals out. So deer, again, exclusion. That's where something like this would work for deer as well to keep them out. Squirrels. Squirrels are squirrels. I hate to tell you, they're little pests, and you know that. And you can do your best. Hopefully, they won't find your crop, and you'll still be able to share, or your crop will be so abundant you can share with some of the wildlife as well. So, there are some publications that are listed on here, and again, I will send that information out to you with the recording. So things to remember, to sum it all up, things to remember. Varieties for New Jersey: brown turkey, Celeste, hardy Chicago, Mission, and green Aisha. I say Aisha, but it's Isia. Sorry. You can experiment with others. So, if you do find there are some growers in New Jersey that offer a plethora of different varieties, so you can experiment with others, but you're experimenting. So you can't always say, oh, it's going to grow just like my Mission fig. It may not. Provide sun. Plant it in a protected area on that southern, southern side, possibly so that it has some winter protection and some warmth in the wintertime or later in the season, so that you get that fully ripened crop, and well-drained soil. Go easy on the fertilizer and pruning after the first year, and provide winter protection in places, or place it in an unheated garage or shed. So anybody can grow a fig plant. And I'm a testament to that. So I have to say, I grow lots of things and I love plants. Figs are one of those that, I'm experimenting with as well. So I think it's one of those plants that has such a mystery, and it's like, if you can grow it, you are the star of the neighborhood when you can pass out your figs. But take a chance, grow some figs. It'd be a fun experiment. And hey, things are starting to open up a little bit, but you can grow your own if you have the time and the space for it as well. So I do have a slide in here for sources of fig trees. Now, this is not meant to be an end-all to be-all. It's just a quick Google search. They're not the only suppliers. So if you have somebody that you guys know or you use, please feel free to use them. I'm not giving endorsements to anyone. I don't know any of these people. I just wanted to, a lot of people ask us, where do you find figs? So this was just a short list of some places in Ocean County. Check with local garden centers. You can find them from local garden centers, and they do get them from some people that start them here, some commercial growers, as well as some bigger commercial growers where they truck them in. So you can get them at your local garden centers. There are also in Flemington, Bill's Figs, New Jersey Fig Farm, Sally's Figs. They were, again, some couple people that I just happened to Google. There was no good or bad. I don't know anything else about them. And then mail order. That's another way you can get your figs. So there were some Gurney, Stark Brothers, Wilson Brothers Gardens. Again, just some random people that I chose on a list that came out of Google. So I'm going to leave this up for some of the different fact sheets, just in case there's some, you guys can, if, again, you will get this PowerPoint at the end with the recording. So if you have more questions or you come up with questions as you're reading things, you can contact us from there. And I know I've talked a lot, but I'm going to let Patty and Diane let me know what kind of questions are in the Q&A.
Some people are
Yes.
asking if they're pruning their fig now, can they use those cuttings to try to propagate new plants, or is that more successful in the winter when you did it?
So a lot of it's going to depend on your area, how much new growth is out on your plants. So if it's putting out a good sized leaf already, I would say it's a little late. You could try it. You're only going to throw them out or put them in the compost. So try it if you've got the time. or the space to do so. So I'd say go ahead and give it a shot. But generally you want to do it a little bit when those leaves have not pushed out. You would have better success earlier. So in our area here in New Jersey, in Southern Jersey, that March timeframe is a good one to take cuttings. You can take them, like I said, earlier in January, February, but then you do need to hold them because you don't want to have all that new growth indoors and have them too leggy if you don't have a light and all that other jazz for your plant start. Okay.
Okay, thank you. And a couple people asked, I think you went over this, but I don't remember. Do you need 2 different figs for pollination? How are they pollinated?
Okay. So for the common figs, the ones that I mentioned in here, the mission figs, the hardy Chicago, the green one, those do not need to have a male, female. They do not need a pollinator. They are self-pollinating. So that's the traditional common figs that we grow and that you would find pretty commercially, whether it's in mail order or in home garden centers. That's what you would find would be this common fig that we can grow in our area. The other figs really are you'd only find those if you were looking at a specialty or a wholesaler that would you would grow those in California or in areas where it's definitely much more temperate. So yeah, most of what you can find would be stuff that you can grow here.
Okay, and a couple questions.
All right.
If they're overwintering the fig in their garage or in a shed, how often do they fig and how often do they?
Okay, so I know you're breaking up, but that's okay. I figured it was about a watering. So with them being dormant, they really don't need to be watered. You can maybe put some water in there. You just don't want them sitting in water, as we talked about. They like to have those roots somewhat on the drier side. And with them being dormant, there's not going to be that need to have those roots wet because it's not going to be pulling up the moisture up into the leaves. So do you water? You can put some water on it, but again, in the middle of January when it's freezing, no, you're not going to be putting any water on it. So as we start warming up, as we start getting some, maybe once a month, if necessary, you can play it by ear. If you should have plants that kept their leaves and they didn't drop for some reason, then yes, you would need to water. But most of us here would not have plants with foliage still on them. So you shouldn't have to really be too fussy about them in the wintertime.
And just to clarify, when you put your fig into a garage or wherever you're going to store it, it doesn't need to be covered.
You can cover it, but no, it should not need to be covered because now your structure is covering it. It's protecting it from winter winds and things like that. So no, you do not need to actually cover that up.
See, we had a lot of questions. But Diane flew through those questions like Wonder Woman.
I just stopped. I don't know why my PowerPoint just stopped showing. So I'm going to put that screen back up at the end here. Let me get that end slide because I know that there was lots of, and actually that's for the resources that, you know what, I'll put that one back on. Sorry, go ahead. God, you can ask me questions as I'm doing this.
One that Jill asked was, I'm trying to find it because it was early on, but it was basically about the roots and how aggressive they are and how close they can be planted to a clay pipe.
That's a good question because nobody gave in the research, the literature that I was looking at in the fact sheets, nobody said specifically what's the distance. So if that pipe would be an issue or septic system would be an issue, then maybe containerizing would be a better choice. So to answer, I can't give you an exact answer how close. If your tree is like a 5, you keep it relatively small and it's not grown for super long, 10 foot. But they're just very fibrous. So once there's an opening into clay pipes or into a septic system, there's some moisture, the roots can just clog it. So if there's an opening where they can get their roots in, that's why it becomes an issue into those pipes. You just don't want to put it over the pipe. So if you have a clay pipe or whatnot in the front yard, put it in the backyard. Something like that would be fine.
Okay, and we're getting a lot of questions about, should you prune your fig into a tree or have it more as a shrub?
That actually, I think it was the University of Tennessee's, I think you can prune it either way. What's going to work for you? So if you're pruning it into a tree shape, and it's in the ground, you're going to have to wrap it. So do you want to be up on ladders to wrap it? I would say no. For most people, that's not something. Sometimes the winter doesn't give you a choice. Even though you've wrapped it, maybe it's still just we got really cold, and it did a winter dieback, so it's down to the ground. So I would say just leave it as a multi-shrubbed, a multi-stemmed, I mean, but you could certainly trim. You can train anything into a tree if you have the time and the effort to do so. But my worry for you would be, depending on how big of a tree you let it get, if it survives the winter for you, depending on your area that you're growing it, would be that if you're going to provide it with that winter protection, are you going to be able to handle that and be able to do that easily enough for yourself and not have to hire a company come and wrap your trees for you? Which you can still do that, but.
Sue, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What would cause complete leaf drop in late July?
Okay, so complete leaf drop, possibly right off the top of my head would be drought, possibly rust if you are getting these pustules. That's a picture of the rust is kind of got that brown patch on the top, and then underneath you'll kind of see an orangey kind of powdery, blistery type look. That could cause it. Possibly spider mites. I don't know what other. The scale itself, I think you would see some other signs that you had an insect issue. But when you start noticing that there is a problem, if it's a quick, immediate, was there something sprayed nearby? A fungus, yeah, or a fungus. If it's something quick like that, send pictures to your extension, or if you're welcome to send them to us, and we'll take a look and see what we can do. Right now, again, our office is not open, and Monmouth County, we're not open for people to come in at this point, but you can always send us pictures, send it in to us, and see if we can help troubleshoot before it does that drop. I'm not sure if I answered it as well. I honestly can't say for sure, but that's some of the things that stick in my mind.
Yeah, those are good. Also, tropical storms, if it was last year.
Yes, last August, a lot of anything with big leaves really took a hit. They got some wind burn, some really bad wind burn. So that's a possibility. Sorry, Gingerbread really wants to see you guys today.
So it's 8:02. I'm just letting you know there are still a few questions coming in.
Okay. So okay.
That's it's up to you.
So what we can do is, for those of you, I want to thank everybody that's on. You're welcome to stay. We'll stay on for another 15 minutes if we need to. And anything that I didn't answer or we didn't get to, we can email you tomorrow, since we do have an idea on who's asking what questions. After the talk, when I do shut down the PowerPoint or the presentation, there will be a survey that'll pop up. So if you can write your questions in there too, so we can get that, we'll get those answers out to you as best as we can. Or contact us. Patty can put our email down if she hasn't already in the Q&A.
I can. I have to attach it to a question. So
yes, that's what I figured.
I'll put that in there, but just you kind of have to look for it. So a couple more questions here.
Okay.
Let me find one here. Okay, if the fig is potted, how do you combat roots falling up, especially after a few years?
Well, I mean, they're fibrous roots. Wow, that's a good question. In most plant material, if it's getting pot bound, you can dig it up, do a small root, a short, take off a couple of inches of root prune, and replant it into a pot, plant it into a bigger pot. Sometimes the roots balling up, if it's not too constrained, you can, you could leave it in a pot for 5-10 years, depending on the size. Or consider it more of a short term. Yeah, that's the best way I could. That's really not a great answer. I'm sorry, but I would say, if it becomes a concern and you can't keep the mother plant anymore, take some cuttings, start them like 2 or 3 years before it might be an issue. That's again that's an easy out. Sorry, guys. But root pruning is not an easy one to describe how to do it, except for taking your shovel, take it out of the pot. Take your shovel, take a slicing shovel and cut into the edges, break up that root ball a little bit at the base, and then put it back just like you would do a geranium or something if it's pot bound. But again, it could be a large tree or a large pot, so it may not work for you, or it may not be conducive to do that. It might just be too much, too heavy, too big. Sorry, that was a good question though.
I'm seeing a lot, I guess, people are starting to see that their fig trees are in the garage. They're starting to leaf out.
Mm-hmm.
They want to put it out, but they're worried about temperatures.
So it would be very similar to, for here in South Jersey, we're coming up to our frost-free date, which is the May 15th. So we're another 3 weeks before. You can, on days like today, we were 75. You could put it outside in a sheltered area. Again, don't put it right out in the full all-day sun. Temper it a little bit. Harden it off, so to speak. You can put it outside for the day and bring it in, but that is a lot of moving. So you just don't want to leave it, especially if the leaves are coming out. I would not leave it out with temperatures below 45. Even 50 might be pushing it. So it's still a little bit cold to leave it out overnight. You can put it out for the day, bring it in for the evening, but watch those temperatures when they dip lower, especially if the leaves are going to be fully out.
And so we have this a couple times here. What would cause the tree to not have any fruit?
Okay, so it didn't produce any fruit, would be the season wasn't long enough to possibly produce those flowers. Well, you don't really see the flower. We think of it as a flower. We see the fruit, but it's actually probably flower, and it never got pollinated. It just was that the fruit did not ripen. It may have fallen off. It may have started and then dropped off. So possibly the variety that you have, maybe that growing season may not have been long enough. Pruning, wrong pruning. Fruit drop, premature fruit drop would also be the nitrogen if you're doing too much fertilizer at the wrong time. I shouldn't say at the wrong time, but just too much fertilizer. That was it. Also, if they're stressed too much, they want well-drained soil, but you don't want to leave it outside with winds for a week with no rain at all or no water if it's in a pot especially. I'm not sure if that helps troubleshoot that question, because I know that's kind of a tricky one. A lot of people, they just don't get the fruit, or the fruit don't mature or doesn't mature, and that's usually because of our short growing season for us.
I know for sure that growing up, my mom had a fig tree, and it was on the eastern side of the house. But as time went on, it got really shady, and it didn't, it used to produce, and then it lived for year after, it lived for a long time, but it got too shady and just stopped producing altogether.
Yeah, so again, yes, that's a great, I didn't even think about that. We don't always realize that some of the other plants that might be in the ground, some larger trees, as the years go, it could be too shady. Yes.
I do see a comment here that they love the kitty tail.
Oh, sorry. It's not very professional. I apologize, but she, yeah.
Mary is asking that we send the Justice for All slide. We will do that for sure.
Oh, for our, yes. Okay. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Here's another one. Do the different suggested common fig varieties ripen at the same time?
No. Most of them, of the 5 varieties that I believe that is the 5 that were in the Rutgers fact sheet for New Jersey. Most of them will ripen. You're getting that second crop will ripen in that mid-September, but some of them might ripen a little later. Some of them might ripen a little earlier. I believe it's the oh my goodness, the Celeste, I believe, has a shorter growing season, so that might ripen a little faster or sooner, so that you can harvest it before that the temperatures become an issue in the fall. So that is definitely one. And, you know, people that are fig enthusiasts, there are a lot of pages out there that are for fig enthusiasts, and we were trying to provide you with research-based information. But, you know, if there are some of the different people that are on here that you might want to check out some of their blogs or their sites to get some insight that might be a little different than what we're giving you. But again, we try to make sure that we're doing it based on what's been tried and true.
You want a few more? I guess we have a few more. Okay.
So we'll go for a couple more.
All right. We've had this a couple times. Is Miracle-Gro an effective fertilizer for an established plant?
So whether you're talking figs or whether you're talking, you know, any kind of plants, the Miracle-Gro, and then I'm not picking on the brand, and it's a liquid fertilizer. So in other words, it's water soluble. You need to add water. You do not put it on dry in the powdered form. But you want to. You could use that. It's really going to depend on the formulation. Is it 10-10-10 when you're looking at the analysis? Is it a blossom booster, which would be maybe a 10-30-10? It's going to depend on the combination that is there. So something with a high nitrogen would have a high first number and then the lower second and third usually. A balanced fertilizer would be like a 10-10-10, a 20-20-20, 14-14-14. That would be it. Can you use Miracle-Gro? You could use anybody's liquid fertilizers if it fits the need that your plant has. So if you are trying to give something with that higher nitrogen, then you really want to stay with that fertilizers, the aluminum sulfate. Sorry, it was on my first slide, and of course I forgot to put lights on before I sat down, and I can't read my writing. But you want to do the nitrogen-rich fertilizers at that early stages when you're growing them to help. To help with their growth. But the Miracle-Gro, so whether you use Peter's Miracle-Gro, any of those, the pelletized, the Osmocotes, the time release fertilizers would also be okay if the analysis that they're given to you, your NPK, if that's fitting the needs that you have for what you're growing and how old your plant is. That is possible. So I to say it blanketly, is it okay to use? Whatever you do not use it when the plants are stressed from drought. That's the number one thing we see come in the summertime, whether it's a hydrangea, whether it's your annuals. The plants are wilted because they need water, and people are like, I'm going to fertilize them too while I'm watering, and the fertilizer hits them first. The salts do more damage before the plant can rehydrate. So rehydrate your plant first before you go with the fertilizer. That was a long-winded version of that question answer.
There you go. We got there. There's still a lot of concern with unwrapping the trees and the temperature. So,
well, and again, this is Jersey.
This is the conundrum of the fig. This is it right here.
Yes. So, to be honest, at this point, do our temperatures drop down below zero? No. Might you get some brown tips and some new growth that'll freeze? Yes. Will it kill the tree? Probably not. Will you lose that first spread fruit? If that is, yes, that's a possibility. So yeah, could you unwrap it? Here at the water, down by the water, if it's warmer for you, our growing degree days are a little warmer down here than we are in Toms River. So could you unwrap it? I would probably wait till the beginning of the month of May before I would really start to unwrap. If you're concerned, just like you do with your little annuals, if you're concerned and you hear it's going to drop down to 25 or 20 for just a night, wrap it up real quick for the evening. I say that now, depending on how big your tree is, that might be more trouble than it's worth. But you can still get some frost damage, but it's not going to kill the tree. It may delay your ripening for that for that fall, because if it has to put out some new leaves, the whole plant won't die though. That's the best way I can put that.
I think we've got it. I think we did it, Sue.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Diane,
thank you, Diane.
I don't know if Diane has anything that she sees, but
no, I think we got
we couldn't have done this without you. That's for sure.
Well,
Oh
Sue,
my
you did
goodness.
a great job.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It was one of those topics that we get so many questions, and I'm not an expert, but I will do my research and get you the answers you guys need. So if there are some more questions that we didn't get to, or you're not quite sure what I said, or I didn't say it right, please email us, and I will get you the answers and do some more research. And Dan Ward, who again is in Cumberland County, who co-authored the fact sheet, has been a great source for me as well. He gave me a little phone interview about some of this, and he's like, a lot of people are growing them in containers and making it but try. He was the one that said, try it. It's a fig. Try it. They're easy to grow. Otherwise, what do you have to lose? See what happens. So I want to thank you all for coming, and thank you, ladies, so much. I feel lost.
Diane.
I feel lost not being behind the mic, so to speak. But I really do appreciate your help, and Diane, your knowledge in all the years that you've been in Extension and as a horticulturist. I thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you. No, this was fun.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. Oh, well, anytime. You know where to come find us if you need help. Sorry, Patty. I just gave us some more work.
Fine.
But if you guys have more questions, please just email us, and we'll get to you guys and get those answers out. And Patty and I will be working on that tomorrow and as we go through the weekend, depending on, it sounds like there were a lot. I'm trying not to look because I know I'll get overwhelmed with questions of what we may have missed and things like that. So again, just give us a holler, and hopefully if you guys have some questions about ticks, come listen in 2 weeks on May 4th at 7. We popped in a little video, a presentation there, so that we can get you guys safe and having great adventures outside this year. So thank you all again, and please take the survey at the end for those of you that are still with us. Thank you.
All right. Very
Thank you, everybody.
good.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, now I got to remember what I'm doing here.
I'm stopping the recording.
Yes.